Thank you for coming by Tori Magoo 44. Today is the 15th of June, and thankfully this weekend, the St. Pete Times once again has taken on a very serious issue of the Church of Scientology, that being enforced abortions. And I'm going to put a link underneath in the comments, and I hope you watch the videos because they're incredible. And first of all, I want to thank each of the women who were courageous enough to speak out and tell their stories. I mean, they're amazing and amazingly sad, but important that everybody watches them and understands it. And also thank you to the St. Pete Times for having, the strength as journalists to let these people tell their stories. So often journalists will kind of cut through and cut out these really important things, and it's lately more and more media are really shining the light on what's really going on. And it's very important that everybody understands this is the dark side of Scientology. This is something that happens. But I also want people to understand what happens when you're in, because I'm sure, it's like, I know for me as a public, I didn't know about enforced abortions until Andreas in July of 2000. I'd been on the internet for 4 weeks. I met Andreas from Norway, and he said, I don't think Scientologists are bad. I just think they're misinformed. Please start educating yourself about them. And the first link I clicked on was by Andrei Tabioyan's wife, Mary Tabioyan, and it's titled, Ladies, if you're thinking of joining the Sea Organization, read this. And it was about enforced abortions. And it was part of why I sat and cried for hours and hours and hours. And why did I cry for hours and hours? I mean, first of all, the horrificness that she'd gone through. Secondly, that I never knew of this, and backed up this church, right, thinking that they were doing good things. It was overwhelming to me. Now, I even had been in on this early on. They had, I think in the late 80s, early 90s, the kids in the Sea Organization, and this is how this all evolved. They used to have children in the Sea Organization for years. When they were babies, they were running around their desks. They got older, then they were all roped into this little tiny place over on Fountain Avenue, and people were saying, you've got to give the parents more time with the kids, because the parents literally, because of the policies of L. Ron Hubbard, were worked to death and had very little parental time with their children. So they finally started a ranch, but it just went from bad to worse to worse. So later, when they got to be teenagers, the Office of Special Affairs, which Scientology says is their PR and legal department. And again, when you're in the Truman Show of Scientology, you don't really understand they do these dirty tricks that critics, anonymous, ex-Scientologists talk about. But when you're in it, you really, and honestly, I stood up in court and said, that is not true. We don't do it. It's been canceled. Sure, Hubbard wrote a cancellation thing on it because it was a big PR flap. But did they cancel fair game, which is where Hubbard said you can lie, cheat, steal, destroy someone utterly? No. At the bottom of that, it says this cancellation does not apply to suppressive persons, which, as I've explained to you, they declare you suppressive. The Church of Scientology declares you suppressive. And then if anyone speaks to you, they are declared as suppressive very quickly. So it's like a multi-level of horror, right? And so they had called me and said, we need your help. Come over here. I went over there and they said, this is top secret. I don't want you to tell anyone. I said, okay, what is it? And they said, the kids have joined gangs here in Los Angeles. Real gangs, like the Bloods and the Crips and hardcore gangs, right? And we didn't know what to do. And I thought, I know kids. I know how to talk to them. Let me at it. I'll go talk to them. And I talked to a couple of kids, and there was something they were armed with that none of us were thinking of. And remember, I'm a public, but I was an OT7, and at the time they thought, Tori can handle it. I'd handled a lot of other things, that they felt were good. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a shot, right? The kids said, now you have to remember, L. Ron Hubbard has his own policies on all kinds of stuff. One of them is called the Code of Honor. And one of those points of the Code of Honor is never desert a comrade in need, in danger, or in trouble, which they do all the time, by the way. If you're in and listening to this, They throw people under the bus on a daily basis, right? But that's L. Ron Hubbard's policy. Sounds good, is good if somebody really applied it. Well, these kids did apply it, but the only difference is their new comrades were the gang members. They had been rejected and neglected for years by their families due to the policies of L. Ron Hubbard and David Miscavige, applying those and keeping families broken up and rarely being able to see their kids. So the gang members said, we'll be your family, but you got to be loyal to us, right? And they were. And they used the policy of L. Ron Hubbard, and they were not going. And that's when they started, first of all, kicking out parents with children. And next, when they realized that wasn't going to work, they put in enforced abortions, which again, when I was in, I only knew they were kicked out. I only found out about the enforced abortions when I went on the internet, which is pretty much, most Scientologists don't, just so you know. It's really hard to understand because you think it's the internet. The whole world is on the internet, but they're not. Most of them are not. They don't really look at critical sites. They're very sheltered. That's per keeping Scientology working. Keep all the N theta or bad news off your lines, or cha-ching, it's going to cost more and more money. They don't say that, but you very quickly get that understanding. And again, people say, why would you do this? As my father used to always say, as a quarterback and a broadcaster, Monday morning quarterbacks are a dime a dozen. When you're not in the game, it's very easy to say what you would or would not have done, what they should or should not have done. But when you're in the game, it's a whole different thing. And remember, the internet was not around when most of us got into Scientology. We did not have access to these top secret things that most of you know. And you see it all the time now. Now it's everywhere. Thank you to all the critics and Anonymous and all the courageous ex-Scientologists that have spoken out, each one of you. I mean, it is amazing what is happening. And to these women that have told their stories, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. And to the St. Pete Times, thank you for continuing to tell these stories. All right? And I hope you all have an excellent day. I love you. And please keep doing what you're doing. Peace.